gibt es viele Hindernisse. Dein Studium an der Frankfurt School gehört nicht dazu. Bewirb dich jetzt auf fs.de.
Hello, and welcome to the EdTech and Organizational Learning Meetup series. My name is Ruby Salvatore, and I'm here to guide you through tonight's experience. Tonight, we're going to talk about competition in EdTech. What impact does competition have on learners and on learner motivation? And what role does it play between institutions? Before we get started, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, the Frankfurt School AI Lab and Effiport GmbH. The Frankfurt School AI Lab is the home for digitalization and AI here at Frankfurt School. And Effiport is an EdTech and e-learning company that is devoted to being a research and development partner for our customers. We love participating in events like this because it's such a great opportunity to learn from you and with you. So thank you as well for being here, for learning together with us. And now to kick things off, I'd like to give you a quick overview of our agenda. We have 3 speakers lined up for you tonight. First up, from Google Cloud, we have Alex Schröder. He's account executive for higher education in the DACH region, and his talk tonight is Competition, a State of Mind. Then we'll hear from Bolt from Sepandar Sepehr, and he has a Ph.D. in information systems. He's a software engineer, and his talk tonight is Tech, Self, and Mental Health, the role of competition in everyday professional life. Our third talk tonight is from Tobias Himmerich from EDUvation. He's the founder and CEO, and he will tell us about competition or cooperation. A quick note before we get started, we do have most of you joining through Twitch tonight, and most of the interaction will happen in the chat there. So in order to post in the chat, you do need to register, you do need to log in. So if you haven't done that yet, please do, so that then during the Q&A sessions after each presentation, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, you can post them there. All right. So without further ado, we will move on. Our first speaker tonight is from Google Cloud. It is Alex Schröder. He's the regional lead for higher education for the DACH area. He's based in Hamburg and has been with Google for 3.5 years. His talk tonight is Competition, a State of Mind. We will have a short Q&A session after his presentation. So please feel free to post any questions that you have along the way in the Twitch chat. I'll keep an eye on them. I'll kind of gather them up, and then during the Q&A, I'll make sure that those get asked and that Alex can respond to them. So before I hand over to Alex, we have a short video for you.
Hey, Sundar, how's it going? Yeah, I'm here, and I'm excited to learn why I'm here, and I'm guessing that's why he's here.
Hey, Michael.
Hey.
I'm Eric, lead engineer here. I'd like to welcome you to one of the most powerful quantum computing facilities in the world.
Oh, thank you, thank you. What's this? Can I touch it?
Yeah, that's a quantum processor. And inside are these actual physical qubits.
Oh, hey, little guy.
Qubits are the fundamental building blocks of quantum computers, but they're incredibly fragile.
Oh.
Even the tiniest particles can disrupt their operation.
Right.
Which is why we work so hard to create the optimal environment to keep them stable.
Right, and I'm guessing the optimal environment doesn't include, like, Cheeto dust. So I'm just going to put this puppy right back.
Thanks. Let me show you where the clean ones go.
Oh.
So we built this campus to inspire all of our quantum mechanics and to show the world what the future of computing looks like.
Good for you, dude. Look at you, dude.
Thanks.
That's a cool lamp.
It's not a lamp. This is actually a cryostat, and you're looking at the inside of a quantum computer.
Wow, cryostat. I love that word, cryostat. I'm guessing people want to know, what makes a cryostat a cryostat? Eric?
Well, everything you see here, from the wiring to the aluminum, copper, and gold metal stages, have been chosen to create a cold and quiet environment for our quantum processors to operate.
Right. And in English?
It's a fridge for our qubits.
Right. And how cold are we talking about?
We approach near absolute zero, 10 millikelvin to be precise.
Wow.
Which means that parts of our lab are some of the coldest places in the universe.
Wow, colder than Canada?
Yeah, colder than Canada.
Colder than Canada.
Well, it's not just temperature that's important. In fact, we want to remove all distractions from our qubits.
Right.
Including unwanted electrical and magnetic signals.
Yeah, who wants that, right?
Well, let me show you what the final product looks like.
Is this a cryostat?
No, that's not a cryostat.
What about this? Is this a cryostat?
That's not a cryostat.
No?
This is a cryostat.
Nice.
In fact, this is a fully assembled quantum computer.
Yeah, so where's the keyboard?
Well, there's no keyboard, but it contains everything you've just seen inside and custom control electronics, all of which were designed and built by our team here at Google.
Wait. Is this a Bob Ross? Is he on the team? Tell me he's on the team.
He's not on the team.
Okay.
But this mural is our homage to Mother Nature. See, quantum is the language of nature, and we're learning to speak it here. It will enable us to run precise simulations of the natural world, unlocking answers that would otherwise remain unknown.
Okay, so let me see if I get this right. Okay, so these qubits are really smart, right? But they're really picky about their work environment, so you got to put them in a lamp, right? But even then, they're like, no, I don't want anybody eating any Cheetos around me. And they're like, I'm sorry, okay, I didn't know, right? So then you got to wrap them in like this Bob Ross blanket of love, right? And then you keep them there until they can tell us how to think like the Earth. Am I right?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Okay, you know what this is? This is the power button, and I want to start it.
We're not quite there yet. I'm glad you're on board.
Okay.
To date, we've reached the first milestone, beyond classical computational capabilities.
This is us.
Yeah, we're here. Everything you've seen here today is what we're using to build to our next milestone, an error-corrected logical qubit.
Right.
And from there, we'll tile thousands of those together to reach our ultimate goal, an error-corrected
quantum computer. Right. That's my goal too.
Well, you're in luck.
Alex, we look forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all to all the guests watching online today. Greetings to you. Thank you to Katharina's team for organizing this event. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'll be speaking today on the topic of competition in higher education. I'll briefly talk about what impact competition has on learners and teachers, and what role does it play between higher education organizations. My personal perspective on the concept of competition has been formed by my story of origin. My birth certificate shows that I was born in the former German Democratic Republic, a country that doesn't exist anymore today. So I grew up on a farm hearing stories from my grandfather about the expropriation of his land by the government and how difficult this has been for him. Studying all about the history of the German Democratic Republic and West Germany in school, while watching tons of documentaries and reading Wikipedia articles, for me, this has been in its foundation all about competition, or rather the absence of it. So historically, and even today in certain parts of the world, there is and has been a disregard for the very concept of competition. Today, I would like to emphasize the great benefits of healthy competition concerning higher education, research, and your career. I would like to start by showing the etymology of the word itself. It's derived from the Latin word com, which means together, and competere, which means to strive or rival for something. Before I come to how universities, researchers, and students could benefit from embracing competition, I would like to tell you a little story. Amidst the pandemic at Google, our employees and our leadership became worried about how to counter the lack of physical movement while only working at home. So people came up with the idea of a Google-wide European walking competition. We used a combination of apps. The main app was named Kiplin to form teams, track our individual steps, add them up in a group, and rank our team's performance against each other. And these were the rules. So I'm reading from the slides. We're a team of max 6 members, so there's not allowed to have a team of more of 6 members, and it's a 4-week competition. You can make as an individual 15,000 steps per day per team member. So it's not allowed to compensate for others' laziness. And then you have a 5,000 steps to get 1 trophy. So if you don't manage to get at the end of the day, even if you walk uphill 5,000 steps, you won't get the trophy for the team that day. So 4,990 steps will not get you the trophy. And then there's a bonus for the team performance on special days. If you manage with 3 or 4 people to get a certain amount of steps done, then you will get a team bonus. And the team with the most trophies wins. So just to repeat it, it's 3 trophies per person max that you can gain with 15,000 steps. So we quickly formed our group and started walking. Within a week, you could make the math. The steps not taken could not be regained because there's a limit of 3 trophies per person per day. 15,000 steps per person, roughly 11 kilometers per day. I understood that I couldn't win this alone, nor with just another person of my team. We were 6 after all. The majority would have to deliver every day 15,000 steps. The story ends here. Our team lost. We were in position 15 out of 40. While this still may sound good, it wasn't. Because starting with position 17 and lower, people didn't really take this competition seriously on a daily basis. So practically, we were almost in the last position. Then a new competition came up right after, this time including the very large European public sector department, which I am part of. And to make things worse, the best performers out of the first competition left our team. They teamed up and built a new powerful group with colleagues that are thin, active, and known to exercise frequently. Many old groups regrouped according to the same logic. So in a nutshell, we were the leftover group. The party was over before we could make a choice who to join. The groups were full. That evening, where the competition was announced, a colleague of our loser leftover group sent me a chat message asking me, can you be our leader for a new group? I thought, what good would possibly come out of a group of bunch of losers together against the fittest and thinnest of our department? So I found 2 new joiners, replacing the better performing members who had escaped the loser group earlier. So there would still be half of the low performers from last time. So on paper, not changing anything, not changing our chances. Not if the low performers wouldn't change their attitude. And if we were talking about 11 kilometers per day for 22 days in a row. This time I would build a strong team spirit right from the beginning, training everyone to understand the game, to contribute the daily dose of 11 kilometers per day, and to share pictures every day in a WhatsApp group. I started by sending pictures in the morning, during lunch break, and in the evening. Even if it would rain, I would share photos and lead by example. We called our group the Johnny Walkers. We earned 400 trophies, walking 5,970,000 steps in 22 days and won the competition against all odds. So these are the 3 groups that are in third, first, second, and first place. And we won with almost 70 trophies in advanced, which is 70 times 15,000 steps. So quite a bunch of hundreds of kilometers that we made. And as a consequence, these are the rules that I set up for healthy competition. So rule number 1, accept the competition. Rule number 2, build a positive and supportive team spirit. Rule number 3, don't fear getting out of your comfort zone. And rule number 4, just take part in the competition, don't aim to become first. 5, focus on yourself and your team. And rule number 6, get inspired by your competitors, not obsessed with them. What does this mean for education, you're asking? So just 6 days ago, following the social media buzz about universities in Europe, I found this article by ETH Zurich on LinkedIn, titled, Embracing the Competition. ETH is ranked the 4th best university in Europe and the 15th best in the world. Working with many universities over time, you get the feeling what the ingredients of high-ranked universities are. From what I have seen, universities that embrace competition and rank high emerge as winners because they accept constant change. They act as first movers. They lead with courage and welcome change. They build a team culture across campus, including students, teachers, and staff. And they focus on collaboration. And last but not least, the most importantly, they don't adhere to fixed rules, but question them. So they challenge the boundaries. The spread of COVID-19 dramatically accelerated the digital campus life. It has been a testing time for students, teachers, and institutions. The good news, the rise of the digital campus presents significant opportunities for higher education. Universities have the chance to compete and climb the ranks by adapting faster than other universities to new digital trends, who still might perceive it as a threat to the status quo. The following topics have been identified by Gartner in higher education and could be seen as competing areas for the present and future. Trends like smart campus, display and visual tech, as we enjoy and experience today, as well as smart career software that helps identifying students at risk early on to increase the graduation rate, have been on the rise. One of the areas Google Cloud addresses with our services and products is the augmentation of education. Augmentation is in the meaning of simplifying and automating the day-to-day repetitive tasks in the life of educators and students. We offer a collaboration platform, Workspace for Education, you probably heard of it, as well as an AI tutor for assisted learning and a 24/7 virtual assistant. Because this is what students increasingly expect, where we can bridge with new solutions a shortage of staff to address the real-time communication needs of students. And studies show that 60% of students want easier access to self-service solution. 64% expect to receive real-time assistance. And most importantly, 76% expect personalized support, understanding their preferences, and even if those interactions are not with humans, which is surprising to me too. So there's a lot to do for universities to move out of the status quo towards a new digital learning environment. Universities are not only competing with each other for research funds and professors that are best in their fields in order to attract the best talent, because competing is not always about winning over someone. Competition is also about improving yourself to become a better person or organization, to become the best version of yourself and to be able to accomplish what you set out to achieve. Many times it takes effort, discipline, and strong ambition. But once you decide to join, competition is fun. Coming to the end, I wanted to share a term that is on the rise in Silicon Valley. The term is called co-opetition. And while competing has been the main underlying concept in our education system, once you leave the university or school, it's not quite working in the same way anymore. In the world of employment and companies, you need to learn fast how to collaborate, how to make friends with fellow colleagues, customers, or even competitors. Having lived in 3 other countries, from my personal collaboration with personal perspective on collaboration with competition. So competition is something that you would help us grow as students, educators, businesses, and society. I could see this change happening already with startups, and maybe we could embrace competition while still collaborating with each other. Thank you very much, and I am open for questions now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. I don't have any questions in the chat yet. If you do have questions, please feel free to post them. But we do also have just a few people here on site. So do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, one moment. Can we give you a microphone and then everyone can hear? Just one moment, sorry.
No worries.
Yes, I'm wondering if you have more examples about best practices of how to use competition in your environment.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you for the question. So just to make sure I understood the question generally, the question is if there's more example how to use basically our solutions and in basically the field of competition. Is that what was asked? Just to make sure I'm not just giving just some type of general answer.
Yes, basically that was, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think that necessarily our tools are a way to compete. I just think that generally the trend and the skills needed in the labor market and the student market and the general personal development market is much more collaboration than it's basically copy paste or things that you could just easily read on Wikipedia. So I think collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking, the 4Ks, are basically the things that our solutions help universities and students with, and that the software is built in this way. So the way, for example, we also build like plagiarism tools is more to hint what students can improve rather than to blame students for not using original texts. So the entire culture is built around helping collaboration, building something original, incentivizing critical thinking, and working together to come up with something original and new. And this is built in our products, for example, in Workspace, in our live assistants, in our chat solutions, and also our entire collaboration parts. You can always include people and work in real time without needing to copy paste anything. So you're all connected in a collaboration communication platform. And in this way, it addresses the needs for the future. If that is 100% tied to being competitive, I wouldn't say so. But I would say that if you adopt tools that are working like these, you can be competitive in a way that you learn new skills that others probably will learn later at a later stage when they are already needed.
Does that answer it? We got a happy nod, so thank you, Alex. I
Cool.
also have another question from the Twitch chat from Sepsep. Said, do you think there's too much competition in Silicon Valley?
Too much competition. So first of all, I am based in Hamburg and I grew up in a town with 60 people. So I am I probably just have been to Silicon Valley passing by and waving by the bus. So I'm not sure how it is in Silicon Valley, but maybe I can infer from maybe tech talks or something like that, which is really just a broad interpretation. And in a sense that there's too much competition. I think in a way there's a lot of critical articles I read, for example, in New York Times or others, that there is a lot of competition in one place. So it's criticized a lot that the real estate prices around Silicon Valley, because just of the hope and the hype of Silicon Valley, are greatly exaggerated and force people to move out of the area. And we also help people, for example, by offering remote jobs and doing things like that. And in this way, I think, yeah, too much competition in maybe in one place where there's not a lot of space could lead to side effects like increased and exaggerated real estate prices. That too much competition could lead to something, I don't know, like toxic. If the spirit is healthy, I personally don't believe, because I just have seen positive outcomes, especially if you collaborate. But if you have unhealthy competition, if you have these elbow society competition, I believe that can be toxic. But I don't think that Silicon Valley is in that spirit. It is coming like from the decades before, which is more about collaboration and working together. So in that sense, I don't think Silicon Valley is a wrong place for competition.
Perfect, thank you. I have a question that kind of builds off that's a little bit similar but different. So speaking about competition and Google in specific, is it difficult to get a job at Google? Is there a lot of competition there? I know like a lot of learners coming out of university, I've read articles about this. Is there a lot there?
Yeah, so it is probably as difficult as to get in any company to land a job at Google. And I think it's a very good question, because a lot of people are interested in getting into tech companies or companies that work similarly like to Google. And one of the tips I can give is just statistically, it is scary how many people apply for jobs compared to the positions that are open. But what I've seen, and also in interviews that I have given, is if you apply relatively fast, then the chances are as good as in any job. It's just statistically, if the vacancy is open for 4 weeks, there will be 800 applicants on one position. So the chances will obviously lower the longer you wait. But in another sense, if you apply early and if you have a matching profile, your chances are as good as anyone's to land a job at Google. And the best example is myself. So I basically have not any technical background in an academic sense. I studied linguistics and communication, and I work in the cloud field now for higher education. So it's not really related. And I don't also have like an MBA or a PhD or whatever. I have a simple bachelor's degree. So I don't think that anybody should be discouraged from applying for jobs. I think there's a lot of things that you could accomplish by just applying and building out your profile in a nice and diverse way. So I would everyone encourage to apply for a job.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alex. That's kind of inspirational. So I don't have any further questions from the audience or from the Twitch chat, and also we've kind of reached our time. So thank you very, very much for your presentation. And now we have our next speaker. This is Sepandar from Bolt. Bolt connects retailers and millions of shoppers in a unified cross-brand network. And Sepandar will be speaking to us tonight about tech, self, and mental health, the role of competition in everyday's professional life. He's currently working as a software engineer at Bolt. He previously worked at Uber and at Amazon. So again, at the end of his presentation, we will have this short Q&A session. You can post your questions in Twitch and I will collect them. And now before I hand over, we do have a short video for you.
Every day, millions of shoppers are making purchases online. That's a lot of people having different checkout experiences, growing frustrated by the lack of customer-friendly interfaces, and entering their personal info over and over again. Plugins and payment buttons try to fix small roadblocks in the checkout experience, but in reality, they end up making it more confusing for shoppers. Reasons like this are why 70% of purchases are abandoned at checkout. 70%! Losing a customer at the final step of the journey is a retailer's worst nightmare. Making a purchase should be simple, forgettable even. Today's shoppers, they expect more. And that's where Bolt comes in. Bolt replaces your existing checkout to make buying online fast, safe, and easy on any device. Here's how it works. Shoppers save their information during a purchase with a simple checkbox. All future purchases at your store or any other retailer in the Bolt network is lightning fast without any passwords or logins to remember. We call this Bolt One Click. Because Bolt is a checkout platform and not a plugin, it integrates with hundreds of applications for tax, shipping, back office ERP, customer financing, and more to ensure the entire process is seamless for both you and your shoppers. Bolt works with your existing payment solution, or you can use Bolt Payments. Every transaction is analyzed with Bolt Fraud Protection to ensure more good orders are approved instantly. Bolt brings retailers and their customers together in a unified cross-brand network. Shoppers can check out everywhere with just one click. And retailers like you benefit from a 63% increase in conversion rates. No forms, no passwords, no plugins, no worries. Bringing one-click checkout to millions of shoppers. For a better checkout experience, check us out at bolt.com.
All right, Sepandar, I look forward to your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. As a tech employee, I have some stuff to share, and let's get started. So competition is basically everywhere, and I want to share a story. So like I was going, I went to a yoga session in the park, and it was very relaxing, and all nice things you see in the Instagram about it. But then after that, I started talking to one of my friends, and we got into a conversation about meditation, which I'm not expert on it at all, and I just have been trying to do some with some apps and stuff. And he made a comment when I told him that I use an app with like music and stuff like that, that, oh, I do like much more hardcore than that. And it's, I don't use like apps or music or something like that. And don't remember exactly what he was saying, but it was interesting to me to hear that this concept of meditation that is about like self-discovery and like focusing on yourself and improving like your mental health, things like that. How come even something like that can be competitive for people, that you start comparing yourself with each other and say, okay, I do even more meditation is better than you. So yeah, and you can see it also like in journalism, even like that, the fight for like getting the news faster than anyone else. It's not the importance of like facts anymore. So it's one of the hottest topics, I guess, these days. So why am I here? And why am I talking about this now? So as they introduced me, I did a PhD about a decade ago on the role of competition in video games and how we can use it in education and companies and employment to encourage folks to get more involved in what they are doing. But the thing is that in the past 7 years, 8 years that I've been working outside academia, I haven't been doing much of the research anymore, but I have some anecdotal evidence from continuing what I studied there to share with you. And just a disclaimer that I'm by no means expert in this topic, and I don't think when I was doing my PhD even was expert. So take it whatever I say with a grain of salt. And basically, yeah, Katrina contacted me a couple of months ago, and I thought it was a great opportunity. So here I am. So briefly, I'm going to talk about what my PhD research was about and what I found there. And then after that, I'll get into like my experience afterwards. So in my PhD dissertation, I started looking at competition. And you might ask, like, why did I choose competition? That was obviously asked when I did it. And the thing is, like, the first year of my PhD, in my schools, I guess most of schools similarly, you start doing some exploratory research and study like all the different papers that are famous in the field. So I was doing all of that work and some coursework, and then I noticed that I was more like the person on the right here when I was doing those things, versus like in the past when I was playing video games, or even when I was on Facebook trying to argue with people. I was so engaged in those conversations that like winning the argument or winning a game or something like that was like so captivating that like I wouldn't care about anything else. I just wanted to do that. And that's how I got into studying video games. And then I did more research and figure out the different dimensions that makes video games entertaining and engaging, and found this gap in the literature that competition is kind of like a understudied aspect of those video games, and how we can use it in education, especially, or in workplaces, was barely studied at that point. So started looking at some theoretical frameworks, and flow theory came up as like one of the most promising ones. And you might have heard about it in the field of positive psychology, that someone named Csikszentmihalyi came up with this model that says for an activity or task to be fully engaging, that you get into this state that he calls flow, that you lose the track of time and you're completely enjoying the experience, and nothing else matters for you. There are two main aspects for it. One is challenge of the task or activity, and the other one is the skills. If the activities has too much skills, you have too much skill for the activity, then you get bored. Or if the activity is too challenging for you, then you have anxiety. But there's a balance in between that creates this state of flow. And this is a kind of very simplified version of this model. You can find more complicated versions on the internet if you're interested. And I also found another theory called self-determination theory that seemed very promising for explaining things. And to this day, I go back to the seminal papers there and try to study them. And every time I read them, I understand something more. It's fascinating. So self-determination theory is trying to understand intrinsic versus extrinsic motivations and what makes something more intrinsically motivating. So what I did there was like I tried to, instead of using one theory for my research, say, okay, let's put these two theories together and come up with something really cool, I thought. And this self-determination theory, I said, okay, I put it before flow theory. And what this self-determination theory says is that there are three basic needs for every human. One is competence, the other one is autonomy and relatedness. And this paper, I found that they said like there's social factors, for example, competition, that can affect how we perceive an activity to be to perceive that we have autonomy over that activity or that we are competent in doing it. And when our perception of our abilities and like how much this activity satisfies those needs increases, then we can be more intrinsically motivated to do it, or perhaps extrinsically if it's something monetary reward. And yeah, I added those things and then said, okay, let's do a study. And we did a quantitative study and said, okay, let's bring students in school, give them some gift cards and say, okay, please come and help us in the study. And we got a bunch of kids or undergraduate students in a lab, said, okay, to be able to control this experiment properly, we need to have like some game that we can modify the element of competition there. So we said, okay, let's put element of use this simple typewriter game that you can start typing and it tells you how fast you're typing. And we can modify the game based on the factor of competition by saying, okay, you just do it by yourself, or you're competing with the computer, or you're competing with another human, which we put in another room so you can see, or that human could be your friend. So increasingly change the degree of competition and test it. And then I won't get into details of this. This is something basically that we do a lot in the field of information system, that we come up with this like, well, we don't come up with it, usually like previously studied constructs that we put in a huge model, usually not huge as few, because they're sometimes smaller, and then say, okay, how much are they correlated, and like they're predicting different aspects. So eventually on the right, you can see the satisfaction and the state of flow. That's what we were trying to predict, and see how on the left side, which was like the competition mode that I explained, how increasingly changing this mode can affect how much someone perceives the situation to be competitive, and how much does it affect their excitement, and how much they would get into the state of flow and become satisfied with the activity. So you can read more about it, or you can find articles online and ask me if there's anything about you're interested. But then after I finished my PhD, that's when my real competition began, which was like, do I stay in academia for the rest of my life, or I go work in industry? So as you can obviously guess, I chose the right one. I mean, like the picture on the right, not the right versus wrong. That's the view from an Amazon office in downtown Toronto. That's the picture I took there. And that's how the competition more or less ended for me, that I don't have to compete with a whole bunch of PhD graduates and followed years of doing postdoc and things like that in order to be able to get an academic position and get a tenure position, things like that, that by itself is another level, multiple levels of competition there. So I give up that for the corporate level of competition. And that's where my career started in tech. And I started working in the very early stage startup called Think Data Works. And our competition there was with, we were building an open data platform that you can see on the right side here. And on the left side is a sample of a Canadian government open data website. And it was kind of obvious that the competition is actually not that, in terms of technical problem, not that complicated, because there is all these websites that different municipalities and countries they have for themselves, but it's so hard to access the data. And if we build this unified platform, we can make it more accessible for everyone to see the data. But it turns out that the competition mainly is on how do you capitalize this idea and how do you get funding or how do you sell this information if you're doing open data especially. And also making sure that you have a proper growth aspect there. So I worked there for a bit, but then I got an opportunity to go back to my basics. So I was doing more like a data scientist type of role that seemed like a very cool, trendy position. And it is kind of still today. But then I started doing coding again and went back to my roots of undergrad and master's that I did most of my coding years there, and went back to my basics and started working as a software engineer at Amazon. And Amazon, we were doing, we were part of the last mile organization, and you can see those vans here in the picture. And last mile is like the arm of delivery for Amazon. And the emergence of that organization is not so much about the competition with DHL and FedEx and so on and so forth, but from the need that the growth that Amazon had, and they were predicting the growth that they would have would be so high that the DHL and UPS and FedEx and all those companies cannot even grow as fast as Amazon is growing to satisfy the delivery requirement. So it emerged from that, but naturally it was about competition, that you're starting up a business that for decades these other companies have been doing, but now you're competing with them because the company has to, at the end of the day, justify the investment that they're making into a new arm, especially something that is very mature by other companies. Therefore, there was the natural competition there. And you've heard probably about how Amazon is super competitive with, and whenever they get into any area, they would crush all their competitions and become kind of a monopoly. But this was from the outside, and then from the inside also, there's a huge competition internally between employees, that you have these levels that you are trying to get promoted to. You have leadership principles, what they call that. One of the most important ones is customer obsession. So that makes the whole system more sustainable, that the company can grow by focusing on what customers need rather than what we are competing against. But at the end of the day, you end up seeing a whole bunch of other smart folks there. And I remember always comparing myself with folks like two of the most senior managers we had in our org, who were around my age. And I was like, I'm just starting here. And these people have already gone to level, I don't know, 7, 8, 10. And I'm like level maybe 3. And I was like, I'm definitely a loser compared to that. So I was there for a couple of years, and then I added more speed to this process because I was like, I'm behind the schedule. Like I missed the boat by being in academia for so long. So I need to speed up my game. And I saw a great opportunity. Uber, we're opening an office in Toronto, and then I was like, oh, this seems like great. My career can be even growing faster. And then it was right before the IPO, but then there was a whole bunch of different aspects of competition that emerged from like Uber when I joined. And there were different aspects. One was like the history of Uber competing with Lyft, for example. And you can read a lot about it on the internet. There talks about how they would sabotage each other, and kind of like a very aggressive growth plan, and even with the cabs and so on and so forth. And on the other hand, there were some articles that came out that were against the previous CEO. You can see him on the left here in the picture, Travis. And there was a whole debate about the culture of the company. And the new CEO, Dara, came. And that was the idea of like, now the competition was, how do we improve the culture, versus what we had before was the idea of competition was external. It's just we had to grow at any cost. But now it was like, we are going to be a public company. We cannot have this image that we are just a savage company and growing at any cost. So that's another aspect of competition that came out for me at the time that I was there. And that's when I started to having some slow down a little bit, and then started inquiring a little bit about my own path in life and career, and said, what am I doing? I'm just jumping from one hoop to another. I'm like trying to grow as a software engineer. I'm so motivated by promotions. And before I was in academia, I was comparing myself with other folks. Now here I'm comparing against other folks that are quote unquote more successful. And then I started thinking a lot more about what I've been doing. And I went back. I was like, let's see, where did my story begin? And that's when I started looking at my own family. Anything before that was probably not very much helpful. It's just beyond speculation. Just look at my family. I was like, I'm the last child in a relatively large family. I was like, as far as I remember, since the beginning, I've been always comparing myself with my older siblings. And I was told since age 5 that I can do like multiplications, and I'm the quote unquote smart kid. So that kind of became my identity as a smart kid. And I have to be better than my siblings and cousins. I went to school, and that's not a military camp, and that's actually like the school that I went to. There's a huge number of kids, and that's when, to keep the identity of being smart, I had to compete all the time with other kids and make sure that get highest grade possible. Then 12 years after, doing the same thing over and over again, going to university. In my country, in Iran, they have a university entrance exam, and it's kind of ridiculous process, but it is what it is, that you have like probably 1.5 million students competing with one day exam to see who can go to top universities, and you get ranked from 1.5 million people, and you start seeing, like, I see my cousin, and oh, he's under 100 rank, and my 3 siblings, at least 12 of them, are under 1,000, so I have to be there, obviously. And I did my best there. Things happen, and then I went to university. And then after undergrad, what do all the smart kids do? They apply to go abroad. They go to US, Canada, Germany, Australia, all the top universities. And that's when the competition again there starts. And to some people in the Western countries might sound crazy, but like you apply to like 10, 20 universities at like sanctions, and like trying to apply, like paying for like the fees and stuff like this, like a ridiculous process, but happened. I was one of the lucky few made it to Canada. to do my master's and PhD that we already talked about. And then I noticed that all of these years have just built this hyper competitiveness nature in me, and has become part of my identity, and like it's become something that has had a lot of damaging side effects. And I started looking at those. So one of those was like, I just started seeing that has built this idea of us versus them deeply in my mindset that says, even if you're poor, it's your fault because you haven't tried so hard. And if I see someone who is more successful, I'm a loser. I'm not doing my trying hard enough. So I have to be trying hard and hard, and it's a constant disappointment. And also it affected some sort of like perfectionism and fear of failure. And I remember I didn't finish my PhD because I was loving it. I was just had this fear of failure, and I just couldn't comprehend that I can fail this thing. That was not an option, because there's an objective measure of my value, and I have to always conform to that. And there is this objective measure. I have to make sure I keep it consistent as at all costs. And then I noticed that I've been ignoring my intuitions a lot of times. And this happens a lot because you're externally looking at factors that validate your identity. And then I lost sight of small achievements because, again, as I said, so like in Amazon, I see people my age that are like VP of a huge organization, the multinational corporation. I'm like, I can't celebrate finishing a small task or a small week of without issue or something like that. Things like that are not achievable because I haven't reached there and I'm way behind. And then I noticed that sacrificing body and like not taking care of my body is like a normal thing to do, because those are way more important thing to do. And the worst thing that could sometimes come up is like paranoia and like not having trust in other people, because you're constantly in this state of competing with them, and somebody's either on your team or they're your enemy. And while I was doing that, I started saying, okay, I'm going to get rid of competition completely. And I'm not going to let competition ruin my life anymore. I'm just going to listen to myself, what I want to do. And that's when one of my colleagues at Uber started organizing this fun event called Advent of Code for us. He didn't build it. It's a global thing. I forgot what's the person's name who started it, but basically it's around Christmas. It's like an advent calendar. Every day you get a problem, you have to write the answer for it and submit it. Tells you if it's right or wrong, and then there's a leaderboard for the time of who would finish it first. And we noticed that we cannot compete with the global leaderboard because the people were like professionally doing competitive coding. And my very talented colleague started our own leaderboard and said, okay, let's see how we do against each other. And I started saying, okay, I don't care about competition. I just want to have fun here. I just want to do it for some practice coding. And started with that process for a couple of days. But I noticed that after a few days, I was like, I need to beat them. I was like, there's nothing more important in my life right now than this. And I took a screenshot of like day 14 that even though I was taking my time as relaxed, at day 14, I was like, this is all my life depends on. And in under 1 hour, I had to make sure I answer both parts. And it was one of the most exciting things that happened. And I noticed that I can actually enjoy this competition so much by itself. There's this video of how this Advent of Code works, and it's very interesting. I would recommend it today. So yeah, I noticed that I need a balance of everything. And I started becoming more conscious of different aspects of competition. And as Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So I noticed that different aspects that I need to consider about competition. One is that there's this illusion of time. that somehow we are on the same clock. Time has been valuable, that it gives us opportunity to meet each other right now and be here at the same time, listen to each other. And at the same time, it can be a very damaging thing if I'm saying, okay, I have this amount of time to do because the same person did this and we are on the same schedule. I also noticing the difference between competition or mastery. About 2 years ago, I started joining the Capoeira Academy. It's a Brazilian martial arts, and super hard, and it's for my age, I guess it's probably the last time I can start something like this. So I noticed one of the things our main teacher there's told us is like people come for different reasons. Some come for competing with each other. Some come just for themselves. They're trying to get to the mastery of the highest belt that they can, because that's what is important for them. And there was a very interesting video from one of the PayPal co-founders, and he was part of Y Combinator. And he talks about how competition is made up. So for example, in case of Google, they start as an ad company, but that would mean that they are a monopoly. So they would change the domain and say, okay, we are a technology company, so now we have more competition, even though the company was without competition in the search aspect. So this is something that I can manipulate myself for changing my own motivation. And lastly, get to the pitch about both. And that's where after doing that advent of code that I mentioned, I got back to coding and was able to get back into this game of competing with other software engineers to get to top tech companies. I was able to switch to some other company that focuses more on the culture and mental health of the employees, and not so much about how we are to compete, even though we are now competing on the large scale as a team with likes of Amazon, because we are trying to bring the one-click checkout for all the other retailers that are struggling to compete with Amazon. And so far, I've been here for 6 months enjoying it, and that's my pitch for both. And that's the end.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sepandar. I do have one question from the chat on Twitch. So EdTech Cardi said, after you chose to work in the corporate world, are you still inspired by the academic world?
I inspire.
Yes.
It's a hard question. So for me personally, I've been trying to forget that, because I've been in academia way more than I've been outside academia. So it's kind of, for me personally, a way of, at least in the past years, trying to define myself in different areas. But yeah, I feel like there's a huge gap between academia and industry, obviously. And that's something that there's a big difference in the way that they work. And I had to myself change a lot of my the way I did work, and not be, again, perfectionism part of it is related to academia and my PhD, that you want to be the expert of something that nobody else has done something like this and you're the only one, versus in industry, that's not necessarily what you do. You just most of the time want to do a little bit better than the status quo, not necessarily like have that mindset of like a PhD. But yeah, I don't know if I've been necessarily inspired, to be honest.
Cool, but thank you. I think that does answer the question. I think we also have one question from someone in our audience here. I think.
Yes. So you talked about like the positive and negative aspects of competitions. I'm just wondering if you think that competition should be used as like a mechanism or a tool to motivate people, and what you think has to be considered to make it healthy competition for participants.
That's a very good question. And that's something that I struggle a lot in my PhD, like at the end when I was trying to write the final notes. And I think it's very complicated, to be honest. And there's a lot of research on that like you can add some competition to something by itself. It might motivate people for a bit, like the experiment that we did, it would motivate people to type a little bit faster, but it doesn't necessarily bring in the change you need in people, and you cannot distill a habit just based on competition. And that's the hardest thing about using competition, that I feel like it could be useful to be an ignition, like a nudge you need for getting someone to do something, but to have something consistently growing, you need more than that. So like in the case of like martial arts that I've been doing for 2 years, and that's like probably the only thing that I did for myself that long in my whole life. I've played like guitar and stuff like that for 3 months maximum. And I think competition has been sometimes useful, that say, okay, I'm comparing myself like with someone, or like when we're playing there, but there's much more than that to have the consistency and saying like, I care about myself or my body, or like my growth or my mental health. This is helping me in this case, for example. I think we need to look at it more holistically and see how it fits in what we want to get eventually, not just like a temporary motivation and not having a permanent effect on what we need to get.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sepandar.
No
just taking a look at the time, I am going to say we don't have any further questions right now. So thank you so much, and thank you for telling us about that. And now
thank you.
Now it's time for our third speaker of the night from EDUvation. EDUvation is Germany's largest EdTech community. They provide consulting, investments, and events. And our speaker tonight, Tobias Himmerich, is the founder and CEO. He also founded and sold his own EdTech startup a few years ago. And his talk tonight is Competition or Cooperation. And it's going to look at strategy in the German EdTech startup landscape and what's going on in the market right now. After his presentation, we will have the Q&A session again, so please do post any questions you have. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Tobias.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for the invite and thanks for the opportunity to have a short talk here. I was, I jumped in the session just this morning, so I don't have a proper presentation set up because I was asked to talk a bit about the topic of competition in the German EdTech scene, what's going on at the moment. So the only thing I have is that you have an idea of who or what EdUvation is. I briefly talk about a bit about EdUvation and then about my and our view of the German EdTech market, and a bit about our feeling and our view of the competitiveness and what's going on at the moment. As you already said, EdUvation is the largest German EdTech community. So we do coaching, consulting. We do all the EdTech startup events here in Germany and all the big trade shows, Didacta, Frankfurt Book Fair, LearnTech, and so on and so on. So in our database, there's probably every EdTech startup in Germany, since they only can go to these events via us. Working together with the Ministry of the government, the local, the state government, and the federal government in terms of supporting EdTech startups and so on and so on. And EdUvation was actually founded by a group like 10, 14 entrepreneurs that actually found their own EdTech startup. So the idea is that our knowledge, our network, our experience is kind of our that what we have and what we want to give back to the younger generation of entrepreneurs and startups. having that in the back of your mind, of course, we know the German EdTech market from all different angles, from all different views, and we get plenty of different opinions about what's going on at the moment, and how you can divide actually the market. And the EdTech startup market in Germany, I mean, not only in Germany, but that's where we focus on, is quite an interesting one when you look at other branches and other startup areas. So when you take a look at the EdTech startup area and the EdTech market, there's the main division, the main distinction in the market is between the K-12 and higher ed sector. So that's everything that has to do with schools, universities, kindergartens, apprenticeship, and everything that's kind of in the governmental sector, so to say. So when you are active in that area with your startup, with your EdTech startup, that's a completely different market from the general B2B EdTech market. So lifelong learning, personal and corporate development, and corporate training. So these are really completely two different areas. That division is quite important when you actually want to understand the market and the EdTech market, because the market mechanisms and the mindset of the entrepreneurs in that areas is so different that we wouldn't actually put it together into one EdTech market and sum it up under one term, because it's so different. When you take a look at the lifelong learning, B2B market, personal development, so everything, so the market where the startups actually selling to businesses, to consumers in a one-to-one way. So where you have a learning solution for a company, you have a language learning app for customers. That's where there is the regular competition that you find in every market. And the mindset of the startups and the founders are comparable to every startup area and to every branch that you might think. So the market is highly competitive, and so is the mindset, of course, of the entrepreneurs working in that area, because you have to have that mindset to survive and to actually boost your startup. And on the other hand, in the K-12 sector, so everything that has to do with schools, universities, so and so on, where it's kind of the in Germany say im ersten Bildungsweg, so everything that has to do with your first way of education, school, university, and so on. Usually mostly that's over 90%, I would say, the startups and entrepreneurs that are active in that area, in that field, their mindset is totally different from the area that I've talked about a minute ago, because in that field, people want to do something for the better. So they actually are more, I would say, altruistic. They want to improve the education system. Most of the founders are actually from the system itself. So they are teachers, students. So they actually experienced the school and university system themselves, and they thought, okay, we have to do something better. So usually they don't do it for being the biggest startup in the world and becoming a unicorn. So I would say their way of seeing the market is they want to do something better. They want to improve the system. And so the competitiveness in that area is pretty low. So when you talk to startups, founders, they're actually focused on the K-12 and higher ed market. They are all willing to cooperate. They're all willing to share their information. They're all willing to work together, maybe even offer a joint offer, implement other startups, implement other solutions. So that's really a totally different way of dealing with competition, dealing with your competitors. And that's usually perceived as we all, even if it's a competitor, we all want to achieve a better educational system, and we all work together for that common goal. And so that attitude is completely different to the regular B2B and B2C markets. That's, one of our main points is that these differentiation into these two views and these two market sections is usually not seen by investors, by people that want to support the EdTech market, by governmental bodies. So that's one of our main topics, so to say, to actually educate from our perspective that there is this differentiation in the mentality of the founders. So if you're whatever kind of venture fund and want to invest in EdTech, it's really important to understand that the way of dealing with the business and with your competition is different in these two distinct ways. Yeah, and that's when it comes to competition in the EdTech market. That's super important to know and super important to understand, because all the tools, all the funding tools, all the investment opportunities out there at the moment, they don't really distinguish between these two areas. And our experience when we coach startups, when we help startups to grow, when we kind of helping their incubation process, that's one of the most important learnings we actually got out of our work over the last years, that especially in the K-12 and educational market, you have to teach them the business logics behind it, because people are from the system itself, they're teachers, they're students, and they just want to do something to improve the system, but they don't really think about the business logics behind it. When you actually grow and when you have a product that might even be suitable for the B2B and B2C markets, then you have competition. And that's one important thing to learn. And I would rather go into a conversation with you. So if you have any questions, if you want any specific hint or insight in the market, just let me know, and then I'm willing to answer any question, because the goal of my talk, of my short talk, was that you actually understand these two different distinct views of the education of the EdTech startup market and the EdTech market in Germany.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tobias. I do have a first question from the audience. They asked, this meetup group and your company are obviously cooperating. Is this common between other EdTech networks too? What's your experience?
Yeah, that's pretty common. So in the field of EdTech, especially especially in the K-12 higher ed scene, there's a lot of cooperation. We are co-founders of the European EdTech Alliance, and so there are all institutions, associations that actually support EdTech startups in the whole of Europe. The goal is, working together, helping each other, and that's even amongst the startups and the EdTech startups. That's normal daily business, and that's kind of the nice part of being in that area, because it's probably less competitive in the EdTech startup scene than in any other startup scene. And yeah, it's nice to work in there.
Yes, we often think so too. So does our audience have a question this time? All right. I have a question though. Kind of listening to you talk about it and talking about this difference between EdTech startups that are more B2B, B2C, and people coming out of K-12 or education and having this background and this altruistic kind of desire to change things. Have you noticed a concrete difference in the success of the companies based on if they're more business-minded or more just like, let's do something really good to help the world? Or does it just depend on the idea, depend on the company?
Yeah, good question. But it totally depends. So if you're really passionate about what you do, and so your product is really, really good, and people are actually using your product, you can be very successful even in the low competitive K-12 and higher ed sector. And if you're totally business minded and really focus on your growth of your startup, you can even not be a failure, but stay low and small, because your product isn't the right fit. So I would say there are two sides of the story, and being passionate about changing the world, about doing something better, about helping your clients and customer is actually a value to that can help to grow and your startup and to be successful. So, and that mindset usually doesn't come from these high competitiveness thinking. So I would say it's both ways.
Wonderful. Thank you. I do have one more question from the chat. They asked, why do you think there's no giant like Google in EdTech? How is competition going on for so long?
I think that's quite obvious when you understand the market mechanisms, because the K-12 and higher ed sector is highly dependent on the local and national legislation. So if you have a solution, even in Germany, you got 16 states. So if you have a solution for one state, that doesn't necessarily fit to all 15 other states. And if you have an EdTech solution for France, that doesn't necessarily work in Germany, because the system is so different. And that's why the EdTech startup scene is probably the most fragmented when you look at it from the size of the companies. And I'm pretty sure that will stay that way, because it is nearly not impossible, but it's really hard and tough to have an offer and a product and a solution that's suitable for all countries, for all legislational systems, for all school systems. It's so different. It's nearly impossible to do it for the top-down approach is it's so difficult to do, and startups usually choose the bottom-up approach. So small, listening to your local customers and growing then according to their needs, and that's something that has proven to work, because there are quite a lot of startups in Europe in the EdTech scene. And for example, one example in Germany, if you in Berlin, you got 6 years of elementary school, whereas everywhere else you got 4 years of elementary schools, and that's within within Germany. So there is hardly any product that is one fits all.
Yeah, I did not know that about Berlin, though. It's just very interesting.
Yeah,
there is a follow-up question from the same person in the audience. So do you think there's room for a global EdTech solution?
Difficult question. Depending on which idea and which what the focus, what the offer, and what the product is, because the EdTech scene is so the offers are so diverse that you can hardly give one answer to that question. I mean, if you look at the banking sector, or whatever, insurance. That's the same all over the world. You need a bank. There are these standard workflow, standard stuff you want from your bank. You need to do with your bank, and that's the same everywhere. And there are startups that can do it a bit better, and so it's way easier to scale on a global and international stage when your offer is and the product is kind of the same, because people need the same stuff. And in the educational sector, that's really, really difficult. There is, when you look at the tutoring stuff, so everything that's helping kids after school to in Germany Nachhilfe, so everything that's tutoring, that's probably more comparable. But the rest, in the K-12 and higher ed sector at least, it's so localized, it's so individual, and there are so many different offerings. I mean, even in Germany, you get communication tools for communication school parents, you get organizing tools, organizing the school, you get teaching support, you get so there's so many different ways of having different offer that it's difficult. I wouldn't say there's definitely no space, but I would say that it's difficult to have like a global and international offer.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for that insight. We don't have any further questions from the audience. So I would like to move on to the next part. Before we move on to networking, we do have some time for announcements because this is what meetups are about. They're about connecting and meeting new people. So if you have anything to share, you can post it in the Twitch channel. And I think we do also have a few announcements from our speakers. So Sepandar, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to say that we are growing a lot, very fast, and we are very excited about the projects that we have in our roadmap. So if anybody is interested in joining us, shoot me a message on LinkedIn, or my email is my first name @bolt.com. So I would like to chat anyways. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think we also had some from you, Tobias, as well, right? Oh, I think you're muted, Tobias.
Oh yeah, perfect, thanks. Yeah, I just want to briefly talk about the upcoming events in the German EdTech startup scene, because it looks like that all the physical events are coming back. All the big trade shows are actually coming back. So the first event that's coming up is the Frankfurt Book Fair, and that's the first big one that's is coming up. And we don't have a special EdTech startup area on the Frankfurt Book Fair this year. But we'll probably be there for Meetup, so we'll see what's going on. And then we got a couple of other events coming on. We do meetups, so EdUvation is doing meetups. The next meetup is with Microsoft on the 14th of October, and we also offer the EdTech startup area on the LearnTech, on the BED show in London from the German Pavilion, and we got the Didacta next year. So if you're interested in presenting yourself and presenting your startups, just go to our website eduvation.de and you'll find all the events that are upcoming.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. I also, before we go on to the networking, I do have a short announcement as well. I just wanted to share my contact details with all of you. So for those of you who don't know FEport, we create and enable exceptional organizational learning through technology, content, and our services, very much with a focus on the learner. We do this together with Frankfurt School and with other companies and clients, and we're very kind of curious to learn about what's going on in the world and what can we experiment with so that we can get better at providing the solutions that you need. So this event is a perfect example. It's a great opportunity for us to learn together with you. And I wanted to encourage you to take a look at our website, visit us on social media, but also to reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm always really happy to connect with people in this space to hear about what is actually going on in your reality. What are the challenges that you're facing, or what super cool thing you just tried that was really fun. So please do feel free to reach out to me anytime. And now it is time for the networking. So a very big thank you to our speakers, a very big thank you to you, our audience. I think we learned a lot today. The networking will take place here, but also in the Twitch chat. I have some questions prepared. We have some polls, and so we can kind of continue the conversation there. And just be sure to join us back here in about 20 minutes for a last announcement and just one more thing before we send you off for the night. So I'll see you on Twitch in just a minute, and we can continue the conversation there. Welcome back, everyone. Before we leave tonight, I wanted to give you one last announcement. I'd really like to invite you to our next meetup. It's on the 17th of November, and this time it's awards and rewards. We'll take a look at the role that awards and rewards play in learning, How can you use them to motivate learners? And how can you make sure that the rewards you're offering align with the actions that you want your learners to take? We'd also love to hear your feedback, so please do give us your feedback using the link on SurveyMonkey. It's surveymonkey/r/about-competition, so you can tell us what we did well and where we can improve in the future so that we can make these events a success. So before we leave tonight, I would like to say a very big thank you. A big thank you to our speakers, a big thank you to you for being here with us, and also thank you to Katharina Rudi, my colleague from Frankfurt School, for organizing this space, for organizing the wonderful speakers, and a very big thank you to my colleagues from Epiport, Mario and Manuel, for taking care of all of the tech, making sure everything runs smoothly. So thank you as well. We're so excited to have you here, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the 17th of November. Have a nice evening.